So as we saw in the cube, we have one cell in the cube for each combination of store ID, item ID, and customer ID. So if those three together form a key, then it's very straightforward. If the dimension attributes together don't form a key, then we might be pre-aggregating already inside the data cube. So we might decide to already have, say, the sum of quantity times price for each combination of store, item, and customer. Another possibility, and it's done quite commonly, is to add to the fact table the attribute date or even the time. And that can be used to create a key. Typically, we won't have two transactions at exactly the same time. Now, if we do add an attribute here called date, one might wonder, is that a dimension attribute or a dependent attribute? Actually, it's really pretty much a dimension attribute because we're going to use it as another dimension in our data cube, but the difference being that we would not have an actual dimension table listing the dates. Now let's move on to a couple other concepts in the olap world called drill down and roll up. The idea of drill down is that we may be examining summary data and then we want to get more information, drill down into the details of that data. And actually we can think of that very specifically in a SQL context as follows. Let's suppose that we have this query in SQL, which follows, by the way, the description of the query I had earlier, where we'll do a join and then a selection and then a group by, and finally we have an aggregation here. So this query specifically is looking at our total sales broken out by state and brand. Maybe we'll look at that and we'll just say that's not enough detail, I need more information. So to drill down, what we do is add a grouping attribute. So if we added, for example, category, when we add another grouping attribute, that gives us more data in the answer, more detail in our data. Roll-up is exactly the opposite. Roll-up says we're looking at data and we decide we have too much detail and we want to summarize. And summarizing is simply a matter of removing a group by attribute. So if we took out state, then now we'll only see our data summarized by brand rather than broken out into state and brand. And lastly, I want to introduce some SQL constructs. These are constructs that have been added fairly recently to the SQL standard in order to perform olap queries. And we'll be seeing these in our demo. The constructs are called with cube and with rollup, and they're added to the group by clause. When we add with cube to a query with a group by, what happens is that basically we're adding to the result of our query the faces, edges, and corner of the cube using null values for the attributes that we're not constraining. We'll see this clearly in the demo. With rollup is similar to with cube, except it's smaller. It actually is a portion of the data cube, and that makes sense when we have dimensions that are inherently hierarchical. And again, we'll see that in the demo as well. So to conclude, there are two broad types of database activity: online transaction processing, short, simple transactions touching small portions of the data, lots of updating, and olap, or online analytical processing, where we have complex queries, long transactions, might touch a large portion of the data and might not update the data at all. For online analytical processing, or olap, we saw that star schemas are frequently used. We saw how to view the data as a data cube. Of course, that can be in any number of dimensions. We just used 3 for visualization. There are 2 new constructs in SQL, with cube and with rollup. And finally, this type of query can be very stressful on a database system when we have very large databases. So special techniques have been introduced into systems to help perform these queries efficiently.